On August 19, 1944, at the Wehrmacht headquarters in East Prussia, General Oberst Alfred Jodl meticulously examined the latest intelligence dispatches arriving from the rapidly disintegrating Western Front. His expert staff had thoroughly calculated the intricate details of Allied supply routes, which stretched an astonishing 400 miles from the Normandy landing zones to the spearhead of Patton's Third Army. The Americans, they concluded, had drastically overextended their logistical capacity. Patton's advance was destined to grind to a halt within a matter of days, perhaps even hours. No military force, Jodl reasoned, could maintain such a breakneck pace without an uninterrupted flow of fuel. From his vantage point at Hitler's Wolfschanz headquarters, Jodl analyzed the situation with the seasoned understanding shared by every German general. An armored division, when on the offensive, consumed a staggering 150,000 gallons of fuel daily. The Americans now found themselves 400 miles from their primary supply depots. The conclusion was unassailable: Patton's Third Army would inevitably stall, affording the Wehrmacht crucial time to regroup along the Seine River, potentially holding their defensive lines until the onset of winter. What Jodl remained unaware of, however, was that just 125 miles away, a massive procession of 5,958 trucks was already rumbling eastward in an unending convoy. Their headlights blazed defiantly, disregarding established military blackout protocols, as they transported an incredible 12,500 tons of provisions every 24 hours. This was the Red Ball Express, a logistical undertaking so daring, so audacious, that German military science had never even conceived of its possibility. It was poised to utterly dismantle every preconceived notion about mechanized warfare. Within 72 hours, Patton's supposedly immobilized tanks would smash through German defenses at the Seine. In less than a week, they would liberate Paris. Within a month, they would stand poised at the German border. The Wehrmacht's most brilliant military minds were about to receive a profound lesson in American logistics, one that would fundamentally redefine their understanding of modern conflict. This lesson was being delivered by 23,000 truck drivers, a remarkable 75% of whom were African American, who transformed a simple one-way road system into the most efficient military supply chain in recorded history. The German General Staff's unwavering confidence in the impending collapse of American logistics stemmed from decades of military experience and recent battlefield observations. The Wehrmacht had pioneered the lightning-fast blitzkrieg, revolutionizing the integration of combined arms warfare, and possessed an intimate understanding of the relentless demands of extended supply lines. Their own campaigns had frequently faltered when logistical support failed to keep pace with their tactical triumphs. In the vast expanse of Russia, the Wehrmacht's initial advance had stalled not primarily due to Soviet resistance, but from the sheer inability to adequately provision forces across immense distances. German trucks routinely broke down on the unforgiving Russian roads. Horse-drawn wagons, which still constituted 80% of German military transport, simply could not match the speed of the panzer spearheads. Discrepancies in railway gauges meant vital supplies accumulated hundreds of miles from the front lines. General der Panzertruppe Hans Hube, who would command the 47th Panzer Corps from September 1944, had written in July that the Americans faced the exact same logistical impossibility that Germany had encountered in Russia. Their mechanical superiority, he argued, would paradoxically become a weakness. Machines, after all, demanded fuel, ammunition, and replacement parts. They had advanced 400 miles in merely 30 days. History, Hube declared, clearly indicated what came next: paralysis. German intelligence meticulously monitored American consumption rates. A single Sherman tank, for instance, achieved a mere 0.5 miles per gallon on paved roads, and performed significantly worse off-road. An infantry division required 700 tons of supplies daily, while an armored division needed a staggering 1,000 tons. Patton, at this critical juncture, commanded 12 divisions pushing forward on a 60-mile front. The calculations appeared irrefutable: 12,000 tons of supplies needed daily, transported 400 miles from the beaches over a transportation network that the Germans had systematically obliterated during their retreat. General Major Siegfried Westphal, who would become Chief of Staff to Field Marshal von Rundstedt in September, calculated on August 20 that even if the Americans possessed an unlimited number of trucks, which they did not, and perfectly maintained roads, which they also lacked, and experienced no mechanical failures, which was an impossibility, they still could not sustain Patton's offensive for more than another 48 hours. The immutable laws of physics, he concluded, could not be defied, not even by American industrial might. At 2 p.m. on August 25, 1944, in a commandeered French chateau near Lessay, Lieutenant Colonel Loren Ayres of the Motor Transport Service confronted a room filled with skeptical officers. The mathematical realities they presented were stark. Patton's Third Army was consuming supplies at a rate unprecedented in military history, advancing with a speed that defied all conventional logistical planning. Traditional supply methods, railway transport, meticulously scheduled convoys, and depot-to-depot distribution, had buckled under the immense pressure. "Gentlemen," Ayres announced, "we are going to establish a one-way highway system stretching from Cherbourg and the landing beaches directly to the front lines. Every vehicle will operate 20 hours out of every 24. No stops, except for refueling and genuine emergencies. We will move a minimum of 12,500 tons daily." The name, Red Ball Express, originated from railway terminology, where a red ball freight designated an express shipment that took absolute priority over all other cargo. The Red Ball Express would operate on this very principle: absolute priority, no delays, no exceptions. The technical specifications of this audacious plan directly contradicted established German military doctrine. It involved two parallel one-way highways, one exclusively for loaded trucks heading to the front, and the other for empty vehicles returning. Operations would run continuously for 24 hours, with headlights blazing, completely abandoning strict blackout discipline. A no-stop policy was enforced, except for critical fuel stops and unavoidable mechanical failures. Convoys were to maintain 5-minute intervals, aiming for an average speed of 35 miles per hour. Mobile maintenance units were strategically positioned every 50 miles. Military police checkpoints were authorized to remove any vehicle unable to sustain a speed of at least 25 miles per hour. Colonel Charles O. Thrasher, commanding the advanced section of ADSEC, Advanced Section Communication Zone, reviewed the projected figures. "We need 140 truck companies, a minimum of 5,958 vehicles, operating at 90% availability. That is simply impossible by any logistics textbook ever written." Yet, within a mere 36 hours, the impossible was fully operational. On August 26, 1944, drivers from the 3,916th Quartermaster Truck Company climbed into their GMC CCKW 2.5-ton trucks, affectionately nicknamed the Deuce and a Half, loaded with 105mm artillery shells destined for Patton's guns at Melun, 300 miles to the east. The demographic composition of the Red Ball Express would have utterly astonished German racial theorists. Of the 23,000 drivers who would eventually operate the route, approximately 75% were African American soldiers, serving in a still segregated army. These men, who in much of America were denied the right to eat in white restaurants or use white facilities, were now single-handedly keeping the army of one of America's most celebrated white generals in motion. Within hours, the drivers developed their own vibrant culture. They adorned their trucks with defiant slogans: Patton's Blood Bank, Hitler, Here We Come, Detroit to Berlin Express. They even established their own informal traffic rules. Slower vehicles were immediately pulled off the road. Mechanical failures were summarily pushed into ditches. Any truck moving below 20 miles per hour was deemed a roadblock. By August 28, German reconnaissance units began reporting something entirely unprecedented. Units from Aufklärungsabteilung 116 radioed from positions overlooking the main Red Ball route, continuous vehicle column. Headlights visible for 20 kilometers. No spacing. No blackout discipline. Estimate 1,000 vehicles per hour. Americans have abandoned all military precaution. This violated every tenet of German military doctrine. Headlights at night invited aerial attacks. Continuous columns presented ideal artillery targets. The absence of spacing between vehicles meant a single disabled truck could halt an entire convoy. Yet, the Americans appeared utterly unconcerned. General Lieutenant Edgar Feuchtinger, commanding the 21st Panzer Division, personally observed the Red Ball Express from concealed positions on August 30th. His report to Army Group B headquarters reflected a growing sense of alarm. The enemy operates a supply system beyond our comprehension. Vehicles pass at 30-second intervals, day and night, without pause. They do not hide, do not disperse, do not follow any rules we understand. It is not military science, it is mass production applied to warfare. What the Germans failed to grasp was that American logistics operated on fundamentally different principles. Where German doctrine emphasized concealment, Americans relied on sheer volume. Where Germans meticulously conserved vehicles, Americans anticipated a 20% mechanical failure rate and planned accordingly. Where Germans adhered to rigid military procedures, Americans constantly improvised. The achievements of the Red Ball Express defied all German calculations of what was logistically feasible. In its first week, from August 25 to 31, 1944, 89,000 tons of supplies were delivered, averaging 12,848 tons daily. The round-trip distance covered was 686 miles. The 5,958 trucks completed an average of 1.5 trips daily. The operation itself consumed 300,000 gallons of fuel. German logistics specialists, upon capturing these figures from American documents, dismissed them as mere propaganda. But the numbers were undeniably real, and they were accelerating. By September 5, the Red Ball Express had established a rhythm that seemed utterly impossible to German logistics officers, who still relied on horse-drawn wagons for 80% of their transport. Convoys departed every 5 minutes from both the origin and terminus. An average convoy consisted of 67 vehicles, with a standard load of 5 tons per vehicle, frequently overloaded to 7 tons. The time to cover 350 miles one-way averaged 14 hours, with a turnaround time of just 2 hours at each end. Approximately 5,000 vehicles were in constant motion at any given moment. The Red Ball Express generated innovations hourly as drivers and mechanics spontaneously solved problems that German military scientists considered insurmountable. When trucks broke down, which occurred at a rate of approximately 1,800 daily, mobile maintenance units performed repairs directly on the roadside. Mechanics developed a triage system, 15 minutes to fix it, or push it off the road. Parts were cannibalized from vehicles deemed irreparable. Engines were swapped in a remarkable 45 minutes using mobile cranes. When the designated Red Ball route became congested, drivers simply created alternate paths. They commandeered French buses to move personnel, freeing up trucks for cargo. They even borrowed German vehicles, hastily painting them olive drab and pressing them into service. They constructed bypasses around destroyed bridges, utilizing rubble from bombed buildings as roadbed. The Germans, observing this apparent chaos that somehow produced astonishing order, simply could not comprehend it. German logistics doctrine emphasized meticulous planning, strict maintenance schedules, and proper procedures. The Americans violated every single one of these principles, yet their system accelerated rather than collapsed. The most stunning revelation for German observers was the American approach to fuel management. The Red Ball Express alone consumed 300,000 gallons of gasoline daily for its own operations, more than many entire German armies received for all purposes. Yet, fuel never ran short. The Americans had created a parallel marvel, Operation Pluto. Pipelines lay beneath the ocean, carrying fuel across the English Channel. By September 1944, fuel flowed through these underwater pipes, which German intelligence hadn't even detected. Forward fuel dumps were established every 25 miles along the Red Ball route. Tanker trucks operated their own paramilitary convoy system, ensuring no vehicle waited more than 10 minutes for refueling. General Major Walter Warlimont, observing aerial reconnaissance photographs, remarked, "The Americans have fuel dumps larger than our entire strategic reserves. They burn more gasoline moving gasoline than we allocate to entire panzer divisions. This isn't war as we understand it, it's industrial overflow." The Red Ball Express didn't just sustain Patton's advance, it multiplied its speed exponentially. German military doctrine calculated that an armored division could sustain an advance of 20 to 30 miles daily under optimal conditions. Patton's divisions, supplied by the Red Ball Express, averaged an astounding 40 to 60 miles daily for weeks on end. On September 1, 1944, the 4th Armored Division advanced 35 miles in morning operations, halted for resupply at noon, where Red Ball trucks were waiting with fuel and ammunition, and then advanced another 32 miles in the afternoon. This 67-mile single-day advance utterly shattered German defensive planning, which assumed a maximum of 30-mile daily advances. General Oberst Heinz Guderian, reviewing these reports in East Prussia, initially refused to believe them. No armored force can advance 60 miles daily for a week. Mechanical failures alone prevent it. This is propaganda or misidentification. But intercepted American radio traffic confirmed the unbelievable. More disturbing for German commanders, the Americans were broadcasting their positions openly, without code, supremely confident in their ability to move faster than the Germans could react. By September 5, 1944, German intelligence had compiled comprehensive reports on the Red Ball Express. The implications were catastrophic for Wehrmacht planning. Every assumption about American military capability required urgent revision. The report contained observations that defied German military science. Americans wasted vehicles prodigiously, often abandoning damaged trucks rather than painstakingly repairing them. Drivers operated on stimulants for days, violating every principle of personnel management. There was no camouflage discipline, making the entire system seemingly vulnerable to air attack, an attack that, remarkably, never materialized. Mechanical failure rates of 30% daily were simply overwhelmed by sheer redundancy. Fuel consumption rates would bankrupt any European military. Field Marshal Walter Model's response revealed growing desperation. If these reports are accurate, we face not a superior army, but a superior civilization. They make no effort to hide because they don't fear us. They waste resources because they have infinite resources. We cannot defeat this with military tactics. The Red Ball Express drivers paid a profound physical price, one that German observers could not see. Drivers operated for up to 72 straight hours, hallucinating from exhaustion and benzodrine. Accidents claimed the lives of 300 drivers during the Red Ball's operational period. Trucks collided in fog, overturned and burned on damaged roads, or ignited when overheated engines caught fire. Yet, morale remained extraordinarily high. These men, predominantly African American, though denied equal rights at home, understood they were making history. They were proving Hitler's insidious racial theories wrong with every mile driven, every ton delivered. Captured German officers provided eloquent testimony to the Red Ball Express's overwhelming impact. A prisoner in September 1944 told interrogators, "We knew we'd lost when we understood your supply system. You violate every rule. Waste fuel, abandon vehicles, exhaust drivers, yet succeed through sheer volume. You've industrialized warfare beyond our comprehension." The psychological impact on German forces was devastating. Wehrmacht soldiers could hear American trucks all night, every night, endless motors, endless supplies. They had 3 rounds per rifle, while Americans were bringing millions of rounds. The very sound became a form of psychological warfare. The vehicles themselves amazed German engineers. The GMC CCKW 2.5-ton truck, the sturdy backbone of the Red Ball Express, represented mass production perfection. General Motors had produced over 500,000 of these vehicles by war's end, more trucks than the entire German military possessed of all types combined. These trucks featured innovations Germans had not implemented: all-wheel drive as standard, not an exception, automatic tire inflation systems, waterproofing that allowed 30-inch fording, and engines that ran on low-quality fuel without modification, with heaters that actually worked in winter. More stunning was the American maintenance philosophy, where Germans rebuilt engines, Americans simply replaced them; where Germans rationed parts, Americans discarded entire vehicles for minor problems. Where Germans had a few master mechanics, Americans had thousands of competent mechanics who could perform 80% of all repairs. As the front moved eastward, the Red Ball Express adapted with a speed that stunned German planners, accustomed to weeks of preparation for major logistical changes. When the original route became insufficient, Americans created Red Ball Express extensions overnight. The White Ball Express from Rouen to Paris, the Green Diamond from Cherbourg to railroad transfer points, the Red Line from Bayeux to Brussels, ABC from Antwerp-Brussels-Charleroi, each new route was operational within 48 hours of conception. German staff officers required weeks to plan similar operations. The Americans simply painted new markers, assigned trucks, and started rolling. The predominance of African American drivers in the Red Ball Express created profound cognitive dissonance for German racial theorists. Nazi ideology declared blacks inferior, incapable of technical tasks, and lacking initiative. Yet, these drivers were performing logistical miracles that German forces simply could not match. The African American soldiers understood the bitter irony. They knew what the Nazis thought of them, which only spurred them to drive even harder. Every mile they drove proved Hitler wrong. They were fighting racism with truck keys, defeating Nazi ideology through superior performance. Some German prisoners, for example, forced to load Red Ball trucks as laborers, found their worldview shattered by working alongside African American sergeants who calculated weight distributions faster than German engineers, spoke better English than German English instructors, and treated prisoners fairly despite everything Nazi propaganda had told them about racial behavior. The Red Ball Express required infrastructure that Germans deemed impossible to create under combat conditions. Engineers built or reinforced 40 bridges, established 15 major fuel depots, set up 26 maintenance stations, and constructed 8 temporary cities for drivers, all while the operation was running. The bridge at Mantes had been destroyed by German engineers specifically to halt American logistics. The Wehrmacht calculated its replacement would require a minimum of 6 weeks. American engineers built a temporary bridge in a mere 14 hours, while Red Ball convoys detoured only 8 miles on hastily bulldozed bypass roads. German engineers observed American construction methods with astonishment: no lengthy planning meetings, no detailed blueprints, just immediate action. They built faster than Germans could destroy, creating infrastructure that appeared overnight in the French fields. One Red Ball Express achievement particularly stunned German artillery officers: supply rates that exceeded their highest theoretical calculations. American artillery units fired without restriction, a luxury no German unit had enjoyed since 1942. During the reduction of Metz fortifications in September 1944, the XX Corps artillery fired 100,000 rounds in 24 hours. The Red Ball Express delivered every single round, plus a 20% surplus. German artillery defending Metz was rationed to 50 rounds per gun per day. The disparity was overwhelming. American guns fired continuously for hours, while German artillery officers calculated that such bombardments required 50 truckloads of ammunition per hour. The Red Ball provided it without pause. The Red Ball Express consumed vehicles at rates that would have paralyzed any other military. By late September, mechanical attrition reached staggering proportions. Average vehicle life was 10,000 miles, normal was 30,000, the daily deadline rate reached 30% of all vehicles, 500 engines were replaced weekly, 10,000 tires were consumed weekly, and a total of 5,000 plus vehicles were destroyed or abandoned. Yet, the operation never slowed. American production had anticipated such losses. Ships arrived weekly at French ports carrying hundreds of new trucks. Replacement drivers, often fresh recruits, were trained in 2 days and immediately thrown into convoys. German calculations showed Americans destroying more trucks weekly than the Wehrmacht possessed in France. Yet, their transport capacity increased rather than decreased. They had achieved something Germans thought impossible: logistics faster than consumption. French civilians along the Red Ball route witnessed an American abundance that starkly contradicted years of German occupation scarcity. The psychological impact on the local populations was immediate and profound. The Red Ball Express drivers, particularly the African Americans, often shared their rations with French civilians, despite regulations. At every stop, children would gather, and drivers would generously give them chocolate, cigarettes, and soap. The contrast with German occupation was stark. Americans casually gave away what Germans had strictly rationed. German intelligence reported the significant propaganda impact. French civilians now believe American victory is inevitable. They cite the truck convoys as proof. Resistance activity has increased 400% along the Red Ball routes. The population that accepted our occupation now actively opposes it. In early September 1944, the Red Ball Express faced its greatest challenge. Patton's Third Army had advanced so far that even the Red Ball struggled to maintain supply rates. The round trip now exceeded 700 miles. Drivers were collapsing from exhaustion. Vehicles were disintegrating under the strain. German intelligence detected the strain. General der Panzertruppe Asso von Manschufel reported on September 8, American supply lines show signs of collapse. Convoy intervals have increased from 5 to 15 minutes. Vehicle speed has decreased. This is our opportunity. But American adaptability again surprised the Germans. Within 72 hours, the Red Ball Express reorganized, creating intermediate transfer points that cut individual runs to 350 miles, implemented driver rotation systems, established forward maintenance bases, and doubled the number of assigned vehicles. By September 12, tonnage delivery had actually increased. The crisis that should have halted Patton only made the system stronger. Supplementing the Red Ball Express, Americans implemented another logistical solution Germans deemed impossible: large-scale aerial supply. C-47 transport aircraft began delivering critical supplies directly to forward units, each aircraft carrying 3 tons. On September 16, 1944, Wehrmacht observers counted 900 transport flights in a single day, delivering 2,720 passengers and 700 tons of cargo by air. The Luftwaffe, at its peak, had managed only 300 tons daily to Stalingrad, and considered that a maximum effort. The Americans used transport aircraft like trucks. No fighter escort concerns, no fuel limitations. They assumed losses and overwhelmed them with sheer numbers. The Wehrmacht simply could not compete with this industrial arithmetic. The Red Ball Express operated under command principles that violated German military hierarchy. Junior officers made decisions typically reserved for generals in the Wehrmacht. Sergeants commanded operations larger than those managed by German colonels. This decentralization baffled German observers. American logistics operated without apparent central control. Every lieutenant acted like a general, every sergeant like a colonel. Chaos should have resulted. Instead, they achieved an efficiency the Wehrmacht could not match with its rigid hierarchy. By October 1944, advancing railheads began to reduce Red Ball Express requirements. The operation, initially projected to last 10 days, had continued for 82 days, delivering 412,000 tons of supplies over 122 million ton-miles. German commanders, now fighting on their own borders, reflected on what they had witnessed. Field Marshal Model wrote in his final report, "We were not defeated by American tanks or planes primarily. We were defeated by American trucks." The Red Ball Express proved that in modern war, logistics is strategy. The transition to rail transport was itself a marvel. American railroad engineers had reconstructed 1,000 miles of destroyed French rail lines while the Red Ball was still running. They laid new track faster than Germans had destroyed it, often using captured German rail equipment. The final Red Ball Express statistics defied every German calculation of logistical possibility: 82 days of operation, 412,193 tons of supplies delivered, 122 million ton-miles covered, an average of 5,958 vehicles, peaking at 7,000, 23,000 total drivers employed, 700,000 gallons of fuel consumed daily, 40,000 tons of ammunition delivered to Patton alone, 15 million rations transported, and 135,000 tons of medical supplies. Reviewing these figures in captivity, German officers admitted they had calculated American logistics based on European precedent. They had multiplied their best performance by 3 and assumed that was the American maximum. They were wrong by a factor of 10. Beyond tonnage and distance, the Red Ball Express achieved something more profound: it destroyed German faith in their own military superiority. Wehrmacht officers who had dismissed Americans as soft and overly reliant on machines watched those same Americans achieve logistical miracles through sheer determination and industrial abundance. German prisoners of war would stand silently at prison camp fences, counting passing Red Ball trucks. Some wept. They understood what it meant, not just that Americans could supply their armies, but that they could waste more than Germans could produce. They were watching their worldview collapse, one truck at a time. The Red Ball Express forced an unexpected racial reckoning within the American military itself. The operation's success depended overwhelmingly on African American soldiers who were still segregated, denied equal treatment, and barred from combat roles. General Eisenhower, visiting Red Ball operations in September 1944, witnessed the contradiction firsthand. His aide, Captain Harry Butcher, recorded, "The general stood watching colored drivers who'd been at it for 20 hours straight. He said, 'These men are winning the war as surely as any infantry. We need to reconsider many things.'" The success created pressure for integration that significantly contributed to military desegregation 3 years later. African American soldiers had proved in France what they always knew: given the tools and opportunity, they would match anyone. The Red Ball was their combat, and they won it decisively. German racial theorists struggled to explain the contradiction. SS racial science publications simply stopped mentioning American logistics operations. The evidence was too overwhelming to deny, too damaging to acknowledge. After the war, the lessons revolutionized logistics thinking worldwide. Volume overcomes inefficiency. Mechanical redundancy eliminates vulnerability. Decentralized execution enables speed. Standardization multiplies capability. Human endurance has limits, but they're higher than assumed. General Franz Halder, former chief of the German General Staff, wrote in 1950, "The Red Ball Express proved logistics determined strategy, not vice versa." Americans understood this. We learned it too late. Among the 23,000 Red Ball drivers, individual stories of heroism emerged that Germans found incomprehensible within their military framework. These were verified accounts from military records. Corporal John L. Houston drove continuously for 48 hours, delivering ammunition to the 2nd Armored Division at Cambrai, falling asleep at the wheel 3 times but continuing after being revived by other drivers. Private Booker T. Washington's truck caught fire from overheated brakes while carrying medical supplies. Instead of abandoning it as procedure required, he drove the burning vehicle 2 miles to a field hospital, jumping out as flames engulfed the cab. The supplies saved wounded soldiers from both armies. These stories, multiplied thousands of times, revealed American military culture to German observers: individual initiative, calculated risk-taking, and mission accomplishment over regulatory compliance. Desperately, German forces attempted to create their own version of the Red Ball Express in late 1944. Operation Greif, during the Battle of the Bulge, included plans for using captured American trucks to create German supply lines. The effort failed immediately. German drivers couldn't maintain American speeds. German mechanics couldn't repair American equipment fast enough. German fuel supplies couldn't sustain the consumption rates. Most fundamentally, Germans couldn't replicate the American attitude of unlimited resources. Oberst Otto Skorzeny, commanding the operation, reported, "We captured 50 American trucks. Within a week, 30 were deadlined. Americans would have replaced them. We tried to repair them. That difference explains our defeat." The winter of 1944–45 provided the Red Ball Express's ultimate test. Freezing rain, snow, and ice should have stopped wheeled transport. German doctrine stated wheeled logistics became impossible below -10 degrees Celsius. Yet, the Red Ball Express continued. Drivers wrapped chains on tires, poured alcohol in radiators, and kept rolling. Speeds dropped from 35 to 15 miles per hour, but tonnage delivery continued. German observers reported ice-covered convoys moving through blizzards that had stopped entire panzer divisions. The Americans had created a logistics system that functioned regardless of weather, terrain, or enemy action. It wasn't elegant or efficient by German standards, but it was unstoppable. In May 1945, captured German logistics officers were required to study Red Ball Express operations for historical records. Their conclusions were unanimous and devastating to German military pride. General der Infanterie Friedrich Schultz summarized, "The Red Ball Express represents warfare we never imagined." Americans created a temporary civilization, thousands of men, thousands of vehicles, millions of tons of supplies, that existed only to feed armies, then dissolved when no longer needed. We built permanent infrastructure over years. They created superior temporary systems in days. The most insightful analysis came from General Oberst Heinz Guderian, father of German armored warfare. "We invented blitzkrieg but never solved its fundamental limitation, logistics. Americans solved it through industrial excess we deemed impossible." The Red Ball Express was not a supply line but a flowing river of material that drowned our forces. The Red Ball Express cost the United States approximately $100 million in 1944, accounting for vehicles destroyed, fuel consumed, roads damaged, and French claims for damages. German staff officers, accustomed to managing scarcity, found the figure incomprehensible. Yet, Americans considered it cheap. The operation enabled the capture of 400,000 German soldiers, the liberation of France, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and shortened the war by an estimated 6 months. Each day of war cost America $250 million. The Red Ball Express paid for itself in a single day of shortened conflict. General Lee, commanding logistics for the European theater, stated, "We wore out 5,000 trucks and 23,000 men to destroy the German army in France. In any previous war, that would be catastrophic losses. In American industrial war, it's acceptable overhead." An unexpected consequence of the Red Ball Express was its revolutionary impact on post-war civilian logistics. Thousands of drivers returned to America with experience operating the world's largest transportation network. These veterans founded trucking companies, designed interstate highways, and created the modern American logistics industry. Companies like Yellow Freight, Roadway, and Consolidated Freightways were started by Red Ball veterans who applied military logistics to civilian companies. They had learned in France that volume beats efficiency, speed beats perfection, and if you can keep trucks rolling 24 hours, you can move the world. Military historians universally recognize the Red Ball Express as the decisive logistics operation of the European theater. Without it, Patton's advance stops, Paris falls weeks later, and German forces successfully establish winter defensive lines. The operation validated American military doctrine that emphasized logistics over tactics. While German officers studied Clausewitz and battlefield maneuver, Americans studied Detroit assembly lines and railroad timetables. The Red Ball Express demonstrated that in modern warfare, the ability to supply forces determines victory more than tactical brilliance. On September 15, 1944, Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, Supreme German Commander in the West, received comprehensive intelligence on the Red Ball Express. After studying the reports for hours, he summoned his staff. "Gentlemen," he announced, "we face something beyond military solution. The Americans have created a supply system that makes distance irrelevant. Our strategy assumed their culminating point, where advancing forces outrun supplies. That point doesn't exist. They have revolutionized warfare, and we are fighting the last war." His operations officer, Oberst Hans Speidel, suggested interdicting the Red Ball routes with the remaining Luftwaffe. Von Rundstedt's response revealed complete understanding. "With what shall we interdict? They have 6,000 trucks. If we destroy 1,000, which we cannot, they'll replace them in a week. We'd need to destroy 200 trucks daily just to match their production. We don't have 200 aircraft total." Behind the statistics were human stories that revealed American character to German observers, drivers who hadn't slept for 3 days refusing relief because their trucks might not make it through, mechanics working in freezing rain to keep convoys rolling, teenagers lying about their age to drive trucks. Such stories, multiplied throughout the operation, created a mythology that demoralized German forces. The Americans were not soft, as propaganda claimed. They drove themselves harder than Germans drove horses, but they did it voluntarily, not from fear. This made them more dangerous than German doctrine had understood. The Red Ball Express became unintentional propaganda, more powerful than any planned operation. German soldiers could hear the convoys at night, endless streams of motors that never stopped. The sound itself became psychological warfare. German units reported hearing ghost convoys that demoralized troops as effectively as actual logistics. The knowledge that Americans had unlimited supplies while they rationed their last ammunition created despair that undermined combat effectiveness. American psychological warfare units recognized the impact. They began broadcasting truck engine sounds toward German lines when actual convoys weren't present. German units reported these phantom convoys as real, demonstrating the psychological damage the Red Ball Express had inflicted. In November 1944, with rail lines partially restored, the Red Ball Express was officially discontinued. But its methods had revolutionized military logistics permanently. The concept of continuous, high-speed, high-volume, wasteful but effective supply became American military doctrine. The final innovation was the speed of dissolution. The massive operation, 23,000 men, 6,000 vehicles, hundreds of installations, disappeared in 72 hours. Troops were reassigned, vehicles redistributed, routes returned to civilian use. Germans required months to create smaller operations and years to dissolve them. Americans built what they needed, used it, discarded it, and built something better. When German generals surrendered in May 1945, many cited the Red Ball Express specifically as demonstrating the hopelessness of continued resistance. General der Panzertruppe Otto von Manschufel stated at his interrogation, "When we understood your logistics capacity, we knew the war was lost. You could supply armies faster than we could destroy them." The Red Ball Express was a weapon against which we had no defense. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, among Germany's most competent commanders, was asked what most surprised him about American forces. His answer, "Not your tanks, not your planes, but your trucks. You militarized your entire society's production capacity. We were fighting your factories, not just your soldiers." The final statistics of the Red Ball Express stand as testament to American industrial warfare. Total cargo delivered, 412,193 tons, total distance covered, 122 million ton-miles, trucks employed, 5,958 daily average, 7,000 peak, drivers involved, 23,000 total, operating days, 82, fuel consumed, 57 million gallons, tires worn out, 180,000, vehicles destroyed, 5,000 plus, cost, $100 million. German divisions defeated through supply advantage, 47. Estimated war days shortened, 180. These numbers tell a story that transcended military operations. They represent the moment when warfare changed forever, when industrial capacity became more important than tactical brilliance, when logistics determined strategy rather than serving it. In 1994, on the 50th anniversary of D-Day, the United States Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp honoring the Red Ball Express at the National Postal Museum in Washington, D.C. The ceremony recognized this operation, often overshadowed by combat, as equally decisive in Allied victory. Veterans who attended spoke of their pride in an operation that proved American industrial might and individual determination could overcome any obstacle. They had driven through exhaustion, through mechanical failure, through weather that stopped armor. They were black soldiers mostly, segregated, discriminated against, denied recognition during the war, but they had delivered victory at 35 miles per hour. The Red Ball Express proved that in modern warfare, logistics is not support, it is the main effort. The operation demonstrated that industrial democracy could mobilize resources on a scale that totalitarian efficiency couldn't match. German generals who had laughed at American logistics were silenced by 6,000 trucks delivering 12,500 tons daily across 700 miles of liberated France. They had assumed Americans would follow European precedent, conserve resources, advance cautiously. Instead, Americans created a logistic tsunami that drowned German forces in Allied abundance. The operation's success came not from military genius, but from American characteristics Germans never understood: industrial excess, mechanical aptitude, improvisational skill, and, most importantly, the initiative of individual soldiers who made independent decisions that in the Wehrmacht would require field marshal approval. In his memoirs, General George S. Patton, whose Third Army was the primary beneficiary of the Red Ball Express, wrote the ultimate tribute: the truck drivers of the Red Ball Express deserved as much credit for the defeat of Germany as any combat unit. They drove through exhaustion, through mechanical failure, through weather that stopped armor. Without them, the Third Army doesn't move. Without movement, we don't win. They were black soldiers mostly, segregated, discriminated against, denied recognition. But they won the war as surely as any rifleman. History must record this truth. This truth stands as the final testament to the Red Ball Express: 23,000 mostly African American drivers operating 6,000 trucks on a one-way highway to victory achieved what German military science declared impossible. They supplied advancing armies faster than physics should allow, maintained tempo beyond human endurance, and proved that in modern warfare the side with the most trucks beats the side with the best tactics. The German generals had laughed at America's logistics, dismissing it as wasteful, undisciplined, impossible to sustain. 82 days later, those same generals surrendered to armies supplied by the Red Ball Express, finally understanding that American trucks had defeated German tanks, that industrial abundance had overwhelmed military excellence, that logistics had become strategy. The Red Ball Express ended on November 16, 1944, but its impact echoed through military history. It proved that in the industrial age victory belongs not to the bravest soldiers or brightest generals, but to the nation that can deliver the most supplies the fastest, the farthest. The German generals who laughed at American logistics in August 1944 signed surrender documents in May 1945, defeated by 23,000 truck drivers who revolutionized warfare at 35 miles per hour. Their story deserves its place among the great military operations of history. Not because it was elegant or efficient, it was neither, but because it worked. The Red Ball Express kept Patton rolling, kept the Germans retreating, and proved that in modern war the convoy of trucks matters more than the column of tanks. The highways of France still bear the scars of the Red Ball Express: ruts worn by overloaded trucks, bridges hastily repaired, roadsides littered with abandoned vehicles. But the greatest monument to the operation is the speed of Allied victory. Every day the war shortened saved thousands of lives. The Red Ball Express shortened it by months. In the end, the German generals who laughed at American logistics learned the hardest lesson of modern warfare: amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics, and Americans talk trucks. The Red Ball Express was America talking very loudly indeed, in the roar of 6,000 engines that never stopped, carrying democracy and destruction at 35 miles per hour down a one-way road to victory. The last word belongs to a German officer whose name is lost to history, quoted by a Red Ball driver at the 1994 commemoration. Standing beside a road in Belgium, watching the endless convoy of American trucks, the officer said in accented English to his captors, "We prepared for everything. Your tanks, your planes, your ships. We never prepared for your trucks. How do you defeat an enemy who has more trucks than you have soldiers?" The answer rolled past him at 5-minute intervals, driven by exhausted Americans who were rewriting the rules of warfare one delivery at a time. The Red Ball Express had made logistics into strategy, supply into victory, and trucks into the most decisive weapon of the European war. The German generals stopped laughing when they understood this truth. But by then, Patton was already at their gates, supplied by the greatest logistics operation in military history.